The tension in Atlanta was evident from the first second, like static in the atmosphere. The audience had already seen the exchange between Rasheeda and Yandy. No one anticipated that the night would turn into the startling headlines that are currently making ripples, despite the conflict having been smoldering for weeks. Social internet began humming with whispers. Fans were stunned by one astounding allegation, and blogs were ablaze with conjecture. Yes, Rasheeda's own husband, Kirk Frost, is said to have lost his temper during the heated altercation and directed his rage toward Yandy. Is this simply another warped story stirring the fire, or did Kirk actually attack her? Although not every detail was captured by the cameras, insiders maintain that the disagreement boiled over and became uncontrollable. The notion that Kirk would enter combat, driven by pride, treachery, and growing accusations, have surprised fans of hip-hop and love. Is it possible that the man who frequently acts as a composed mediator would actually lose control in such a prominent manner? What transpired, what was said, and why fans think this could be the most combustible chapter in the ongoing story of Rasheeda, Yandy, can all be covered in detail tonight. And Kirk now. With each angry phrase that out from Rasheeda and Yandy's mouths, the already tense atmosphere appeared to strangle the room. Lips. When viewers tuned in, they assumed they would see another argument. Perhaps a few dodgy comments, some people rolled their eyes, but none saw how deeply the darkness would pierce. Yandy entered with assurance, her tone strong yet steady as she questioned Rasheeda about her marriage and her previous podcast admissions. She threw charges like daggers, not holding back. Even if she used hyperbole, her remarks were full with the type of truth that burns. But Rasheeda had no intention of being trapped. After months of having her name floated about like street corner rumors, she finally lost patience and lashed back. The conversation became more heated. Swift, with each lady attempting to outshout the other while obscenities flew over the table. The adjacent audience shuffled uneasily, divided between enthusiasm and astonishment. Initially, Kirk Frost sat in the background with his arms folded and an inscrutable face. Typically, he remained composed, allowing Rasheeda to fight her own fights. Tonight, however, was different. As Yandy's charges increased, fans saw Kirk's eyes narrow and his jaw tighten as she tossed Jasmine's name into the fire, making him sharper. It wasn't merely another argument between two people. No longer women. It had begun to erode his self-esteem, his family, and his reputation. Yandy drew closer, speaking, questioning Kirk's involvement in the long-running controversies that had plagued Rasheeda for years. She was oozing with contempt. "You behave as though your home is pristine," she sneered. "But everything is remembered by the streets. The drama, the baby, the lies, Jasmine. Would you like to come get me?" The words lingered in the atmosphere like a ticking time bomb. Rasheeda pushed back, smashing her fist against the table as she spoke loudly enough to be heard. "You have no right to bring up my marriage once more. You've been preoccupied, discussing me and mine as if it were your job. Say it directly to me if you have something important to say." The back and forth became into a raging storm of feelings, the sort of smoldering fervor that reality TV thrives on. Those in their immediate vicinity attempted to diffuse the situation. However, it was like to dousing a wildfire with water. It only blazed brighter and hissed. At last, Kirk moved ahead. As he sliced through the commotion, his composed facade cracked. He muttered, his voice low but full of rage, "Enough!" Everybody, his gaze shifted. Now on the front line is the man who seldom ever interfered with the women's drama. Never one to back down, Yandy. She crossed her arms and grinned. "You want to chat now? When your crap was all over the blogosphere, where was this energy? Don't assume that I'm unaware of the true situation." The shadow sliced deeper than before, and the room gasped. Kirk's expression, his patience was eroding as his wife's name blackened. His personal troubles and years of conflict were brought to light. Kirk's voice was stronger than anybody had anticipated as he said, "You think you can just throw dirt on my name and walk away?" Insiders later said, "You keep talking, you keep dragging, but you don't know when to stop." His words shook with controlled wrath, stated that his arms' muscles twitched as if he were about to move, and his fists clenched at his sides. Although no real physical movement was captured by any cameras, according to the rumors that followed, Kirk was on the verge of crossing that boundary. Placing a hand on his arm, Rasheeda attempted to draw him away. Voices urgent. But Yandy continued to stoke the fire. "Kirk, don't give her what she wants." "Look at you," she sneered, about to lose it in public. "Your issue is that you You're trying to appear like you're the guy, but your wife has been taking care of you for years and you can't handle the truth. The excitement was out of control as the audience burst into gasps and tense laughing. Security was called for by someone in the rear, but nobody intervened yet. Kirk's voice was suddenly loud and his face was flushed. You must keep an eye on yourself. Don't mention me by name. Don't talk about my family. I can assure you that you will regret it. Even though there was no actual physical assault, the threat was enough to freeze everyone in the room. People around Kirk said they had never seen him so obviously upset, thus clearly on the brink. Following the scene's repeated social media replays, fans noted how Rasheeda's gaze flitted uneasily between. She was aware that this moment may spiral out of hand, as were her husband and Yandy. Yandy, however, appeared nearly content, as if she had accomplished just what she had aimed for. Drive Kirk over the edge, reveal flaws in his persona, and leave him furious in front of everyone. The battle itself evolved beyond just words. Years of gossip, unresolved betrayals, and suppressed feelings were all stacked on top of it. Kirk was dragged through headlines he hoped he could remove, having previously been implicated. But during a furious altercation, Yandy threw it in his face. The ultimate catalyst was Rasheeda. With each look fueling the flames and each insult cutting deeper, the drama became unfiltered. Still, nobody was able to forecast how much farther it would travel. Before nightfall, how much more venom would be spat. Or if Kirk's rage would either erupt into something that no one could take back or be contained by reason. Kirk's warning was followed by a thick, nearly oppressive stillness, as if everyone in the room was holding their breath. While some were too astonished to even push record, others were trying to capture the moment with their phones tilted slightly in unsteady hands while whispering under their breath. It's uncommon to witness Kirk being pushed this far and to see him in the center of the commotion. However, that night had robbed him of his typical composure and exposed a guy surrounded. In front of everyone, his pride tore. A sneer twisted Yandy's lips, adding fuel to the flames. Leaning back in her chair, she spoke in a mocking tone. Kirk, you sound so harsh right now, but we all understand you've been exposed before, and nothing you say will change what others already know. Being harsh doesn't change the facts. Although she spoke in a calm tone, her words were like acid being poured over recently opened wounds. Anger burning in Rasheeda's eyes as she debated whether to protect herself's spouse and putting an end to the lady who had emerged as her most vocal opponent. Rasheeda. Girl, don't get it twisted. Her hands waved in exasperation as she snapped. You've been spreading false information about my marriage and treating every small rumor as fact. You're not deceiving anyone, so let's not pretend that your house is in order. Fans who later analyzed the video couldn't help but observe how Rasheeda's comments against me are really a front for your own problems. The voice cracked a little. The burden of suppressing years' worth of suppressed feelings, not weakness. There was more to the back and forth than entertainment these days. It was intimate, unvarnished, and perilously near to exploding into something greater than words. Kirk stood erect. His breathing was labored, his hands still clenched. Grand speeches were not his forte, but when he eventually spoke once more, and the room became silent. Okay, so you want to talk about my history. Okay, so you want to drag my family. But know that there's a boundary when you approach me in that manner. You also crossed it. His eyes sent a different message than the firm words. Behind them, a storm whirled about. Yandy remained unflinching. She lowered her voice just enough so that everyone leaned closer to hear her, if anything. Perhaps I went too far. Or perhaps you simply disliked that I was honest. In any case, the world burns because it sees you for who you are. Isn't it? Rasheeda stared at Yandy and smashed her fist on the table once again, her bangles clattering. Truth. The truth would be unknown to you if it struck you across the face. Since day one, you have been completely enamored with me. Interviews, podcasts, and side remarks are constantly centered around me as if I'm the core of your universe. But let me be really clear about this. You are not the center of my universe. The strain was intolerable. Friends attempted to step in, voices piercing the cacophony with requests for calm. This isn't worth it, so chill. However, the train had already jumped the tracks and no one could stop it. There was more rather than a battle. Today, it was a conflict between years of damaged reputations, pride, and ego. A spectator. You can't silence her, Rasheeda. She's speaking what people already think, said Yandy's buddy. The flames became louder as a result of it. Increased the fire's fuel and volume. The crowd's gas. Kirk's look was steely as he swung his head in the direction of the voice. He growled, his voice piercing enough to cut, "Stay out of this!" through the cacophony. It was electrifying in the room. The storm is fueled by every sneer, look, and sour word. Later, viewers said the intensity was nearly too intense to endure, akin to seeing a slow-motion volcano eruption. Every time someone had when the battle reached its climax, a deeper layer of bitterness emerged. Yandy's grin turned into something colder as her features tightened. "Kirk, let me tell you what's wrong." The notion that someone finally had the courage to speak out about something that others had been whispering about for years is unbearable. Your name, your brand, your so-called ideal family. Everything is broken, and you strike out rather than confront it. Kirk took a step closer, his voice trembling with passion. "Lash out? You believe this to be lash out? Keep my family out of your mouth, I'm telling you one final time. You continue to let me down, and you won't like how it finishes, I can assure you." Like a hammer, his words struck the ground, and the danger hung thick in the air even though he didn't go past it. With fire in her eyes, Rasheeda went to Yandy in an attempt to defuse the situation. "Let's not act like you're the victim even though you continue to drag my spouse in this place. To be relevant, you prod, and create drama. You believe that's why people appreciate you? They can see through you now, and you've already tampered with the incorrect one." The shouting went on, accusations and justifications flying in a maelstrom of voices stacked on top of each other. Later, admirers said the unadulterated passion was so intense that you could nearly, through the screen, feel it. Both sides were unwilling to compromise, and tensions were high. When it appeared that the fight could give way under its own weight, a startling turn of events happened from an unexpected angle. Finally, a close friend of Rasheeda's who had been silently watching intervened. "Yandy, you keep bringing up receipts, but would you really like me to share what I know?" "The smoke?" As Yandy's assured demeanor faltered for the first time, the crowd gasped once again, eyes racing to her. It was a modest but impactful change. "You don't know anything about me." "You're just another one of her lapdogs," Yandy shot back, her eyes hardening as her grin broke. However, there was a hint of uncertainty in the strain in her voice. Once more, the air grew heavier, this time with interest. What mysteries could perhaps waiting to be exposed while hiding in the shadows? Later, supporters said that this was the point, when the altercation changed from a personal dispute to an extravaganza that pulled the entire audience into the drama. Speculation buzzed like lightning as whispers circulated quickly. What was known by Rasheeda's friend? Was there something more significant that Yandy was concealing? The blaze. There was still a smoldering tension between Kirk and Yandy, but there was also additional suspense. Kirk's body tensed, his eyes unwavering, yet even he appeared briefly preoccupied with the latest allegation, as if pondering the extent of this rabbit hole. Even so, nobody dared to go. Not when expectations were already broken by the night. Not when the words that follow have the power to alter everything. The space exploded once again when Rasheeda's buddy revealed that shocking information. It was like sprinkling gasoline on an already raging, uncontrollable fire. Voices overlapped, people gasped, and Yandy's self-assured grin started to wane as shock gave way to curiosity. With wide, anxious eyes, the audience leaned closer to find out what sort of secret receipts may be concealed in those phrases. Even Kirk, whose rage had been the main topic only a few seconds before, stopped, his eyes suddenly turning to Yandy, muttered, her tone solid but tinged with uneasiness. "Don't play games," the new voice in the room said. "If you have," her words broke with a crack, "if you have something to say, then say it. But don't stand there acting like you know my life better than me." Rasheeda hit a chord with a tinge of defensiveness, and that was all she needed to jump. "See, that's what separates me from you." "I stand on mine," Rasheeda said with a sneer, her gaze fixed on Yandy. "I know where I stand, so I don't cringe when my name is spoken. But you? Your entire face changes the moment someone threatens to expose you. Are you afraid?" Yandy slapped her fist on the table, her words piercing the confusion. "I've been through more than you can imagine, and I'm scared of what, please? I'm still here. You and your spouse should be afraid since you've been concealing skeletons. Many years, and you detest it when someone brings them into the open." Kirk's jaw tensed, his gaze fixed on Yandy as though her words were sharp blades. His patience. "You better watch it," he said in a deep, menacing voice. "Because you believe you know everything. However, you don't. Additionally, talking about me and mine will lead you to areas you don't want to go." The strain was intolerable. Later, fans said that the moment had the feeling that it may suddenly get violent. Even those sitting at home could feel their pulses due to the raw intensity. Accelerate. However, when Rasheeda's companion spoke out again, the drama took a different turn instead of blowing up at that moment. More purposeful, louder this time. You're always talking about receipts, Yandy, but what about the things you haven't mentioned? What about the folks you have deceived in order to advance in your career? Do you wish to criticize families, marriages, and errors? Okay, but remember that there are skeletons in your closet as well, and I'll drag them right if I have to. Out. The air was filled with gasps. Yandy's expression went cold. Her frequent and swift returns silent for a time. She made a false giggle and shook her head, trying to maintain her position. Please don't frighten me. Me. For years, people have been attempting to undermine me, and guess what? I remain here. I'll be here forever. However, the doubt that flickered in her eyes was not matched by her laughter. Rasheeda said sharply as she leaned forward, "That's the problem, you see. You attack everyone else, but the moment someone even suggests that they are going after you, you lose it. You wish to discuss obsession. You think I wouldn't notice that you've been preoccupied with me, my marriage, my husband, and my family, girl? The drama is what you love, but suddenly the living for you is drama." The audience shifted, with some mumbling incredulously and others nodding in accord. Kirk, but he wasn't going to let the occasion pass without exerting further pressure. "You've been stirring the pot all these years," he remarked in a strong, piercing voice. "However, don't pretend that you are impervious. The truth you feel so proud of revealing will eventually come to light. Eat you alive. Don't claim that no one warned you when it occurs." Yandy gave him a glass-cutting glare. "Do you believe you can scare me? No, I don't submit to anyone. When I want to, I say what I want. And perhaps you ought to examine yourself closely if it makes you uneasy." Rasheeda lost her patience. "Once more, please, girl. All that jargon. But you know the truth in your heart. You isn't brave. You're simply noisy, and the difference is significant. The strain like lava about to burst, it simmered, simmering under the surface. The intensity was nearly intolerable. Everybody in the wondering who will crack first, the crowd was on edge. Later, fans relived the scene on social media, analyzing each look, smirk, and twitch of Kirk's hands as though looking for hints concealed inside. One of the producers said, "Then came another unexpected twist. Clearly concerned that the pandemonium might get out of hand, they attempted to intervene." He raised his hands in the air and said, "Look, we need to cool this down. This is going too far." However, Rasheeda's voice rose again, cutting through the din, swiftly drowning out the appeal. "Right now, don't attempt to save her." Rasheeda gave a bark. This was what she desired. She pleaded for this moment, and she's starting to understand now. "Wait till I've done speaking before interjecting." The manufacturer withdrew. He had a tight face, as though he understood that nothing could halt the storm until it had burnt itself out. Yandy leaned forward and spoke in a broken-edged voice. "Glass, you believe your little group of buddies can ruin me? No, I've made it through worse. They've dragged me. I've been misled. They've cast me among the wolves. And you know what? I returned at the front of the group. Therefore, if you believe that a few baseless threats would frighten me, you have something else in the works." Despite the force of her comments, Kirk remained unmoved. He advanced, his presence menacing. Bigger than before, his voice quivering with restrained anger. "Yandy, keep chatting. Continue to poke the bear. But when it comes back to haunt you, don't cry." Again, gasps echoed across the throng. The extreme his remarks were so intense that everyone froze. Rasheeda's eyes flashed with fear and anger as she gripped his arm. "Don't let her get you down, Kirk. She isn't worth it." But Yandy never saw Kirk stare. The tension in the air between them was so intense that it seemed like the room would blow up. Later, fans recounted the incident. Among the most startling in hip-hop and romantic history. Every second seemed like the tipping moment in a struggle of wills.